Just a Duet, a Percabeth show choir alternate universe fanfiction, part 6. It was a right-out miracle, but no one knew that they had kissed. Somehow, in the mess and chaos of everyone being overjoyed by the success of the first parent show of the season, no one noticed them break apart with goofy smiles. No one noticed the slight stain of red lipstick on Percy's mouth, and certainly no one caught them holding hands and blushes on their cheeks. Percy and Annabeth were dating, and the best part was that no one knew. They were praised after the show for their on-stage chemistry, and natural movements. Percy's mother had run up to Annabeth and proclaimed herself to be Annabeth's new stage mom. In all honesty, Annabeth had cried when she got home because neither of her parents had bothered to show up to a show on a Friday night, and they usually didn't do so either. Percy's mother, was possibly the only one who was suspicious of them, but Annabeth could only guess it was a mother's instinct, rather than actually knowing what happened. She and Percy had exchanged a knowing look when she asked if they had fun during the night. It certainly was a memorable kiss. She'll never hear the roars of the choir again without feeling Percy's lips against hers. "You're being rather peppy," Rachel said in a harsh tone. She gave a scrutinizing look to Annabeth as if she could figure out what made her change overnight. Annabeth only laughed. "I'm peppy as opposed to what?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Being an ice-cold statue. Why, you little..." Annabeth all but tackled her, and they landed on the couch right in front of the choir room. Rachel shrieked and jabbed her pointy elbows into her stomach. "God, you're a freak," she muttered, jumping away. Rachel only laughed like a maniac. "But really, you're so much happier." A sly look crossed her face. "Did you do something? Did something happen? Did Helen get into a freak accident that you totally had nothing to do with that resulted in her perfect little hair being messed up, a total flip out, and now divorce?" Rachel asked with narrowed eyes. Annabeth rolled her eyes but scoffed. As much as that would lead her attitude to improving. Okay. Annabeth maybe did know how standoffish she could come off as. It was definitely not what happened. Yet the idea was still simmering in her mind. "No, but I wish," she scoffed. "I'm just doing better. Is that some kind of crime now?" she teased with a laugh. Rachel cackled. "Definitely. Oh my God." Annabeth turned away with a secret little smile. Just for her and Percy, even though he wasn't even around. She had already been a secretive person all her life. Helen coming in like a tornado made it all the more prevalent. But she really wanted to keep her and Percy's under wraps. Not because she was embarrassed of him, not in the slightest. It was because she felt like she had just earned the most coveted prize, and if anyone found out, it'd just be ripped away from her hands. Percy was someone she felt like could disappear from her life so fast. By leaving for college, losing feelings, or the worst option, which is that their relationship just doesn't work out, despite neither of them really doing anything wrong. She didn't want to risk anything. She didn't want to risk telling the world about the most wonderful thing she'd ever found, just to see it fall apart and then relay that pain. She and Percy were a secret for now, and she was content. "I'm on to you, Chase," Rachel said warningly, using 2 fingers to show that she was going to be watching her closely. Annabeth snorted. "Lovely," she said sarcastically. "Care for a ride?" Annabeth rolled her eyes but got into the passenger seat. Percy was such a dork. He was always doing this kind of stuff while picking her up for dates. "Do you really have to ask at this point?" she laughed. "Just gotta make sure. Don't want you to get a ride from someone else, now do we?" he said with a sarcastic smirk. "Jealous, are you?" Her eyebrows raised. Percy didn't say a word, but he did make a little grumble-like noise, which only served to make her chuckle. So I take it you're jealous of some hypothetical scenario of me driving with some other guys," she teased. "No, I'm not," He tried to defend himself, but it fell flat. Sure, Annabeth said in a sing-song voice. Percy tried to glare at her, but it didn't work. His face melted into a sweet, adoring gaze that made her turn away because she was blushing madly. You're such a sap, she muttered, staring out the window, but still seeing the reflection of his face in the glass. No one has ever looked at her like that. She doesn't even know if anyone would ever look at her like that. How could she not fight to protect this? I'm not jealous. I'm just... His eyebrows crunched up in an adorable way as he fought to find the words in his mind to prove his point. They never did come, and it was okay, because Annabeth had recently realized how much she loved his confused face and was very happy to see it as much as possible. Very convincing argument, Annabeth said dryly. Oh, and you could do better, Percy said sarcastically. Probably, she laughed. I don't doubt it, he admitted. She blushed hard and nearly smacked him for constantly turning her face lobster red. It's especially annoying during practices around her friends. They notice her face turning colors and interrogate her brutally about it. Piper was perhaps the most suspicious, but luckily, Annabeth has been able to avoid her major questions up till now. Whatever, she muttered. Usually, they'd go out for dinner and talk late into the night, and at some point, Annabeth would remember her homework and have to hurry home to finish it late into the night. But obviously with no regrets, because it had been just so fun. But today was different. Today she was going to Percy's house to not only have a movie night, but also to meet his mother in an official girlfriend sense. Was it bad that sometimes the word girlfriend made her feel giddy inside? Sally was just the kindest woman she had ever met, but it was still nerve-wracking to tack on the new title. Luckily, it was a casual night, seeing as they have already met. And hopefully she and Percy could spend the rest of the night just watching movies and laughing. Spoiler alert, they did. And that is how Hazel found out and became the first and only person to know that Percy and Annabeth were dating during their first competition of the season. To say the least, Annabeth was glowing the next day, and Hazel saw it in a heartbeat. What happened to you? Hazel said in a big smile. You look like you just won $1 million. Annabeth just shrugged because it was just so darn hard to lie to Hazel. The brunette clearly knew that because she pressed on. Or maybe it's more of a metaphorical feeling than a literal? She giggled. I'm just doing great today, Annabeth said. First comp of last season, no less. She said. Hazel scrutinized her. In that case, you should be running around like a headless chicken and freaking out, especially with your solos this year. And sad too about it all nearly ending, so it has to be something else. If not the stresses of your duet with Percy, she said thoughtfully. Annabeth tried to shrug inconspicuously, but it didn't work. There must have been a big dumb smile or a little chuckle on her that escaped her because Hazel's eyes got wide as a deer in headlights. Something happened with Percy? She shrieked as Hazel jumped. Her curls flew round with her. Annabeth squeaked. No, she tried, but Hazel only laughed harder. Yes, 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 she cried out, hugging Annabeth tighter than she had ever thought was possible. Oh my gosh, a kiss? A date? Come on, tell me. Hazel pushed on. Annabeth only blushed, and again she gasped. All of it? God, Beth, why didn't you tell us? She said, but there was no malice in her voice. We should celebrate, Hazel said adamantly, but Annabeth shook her head no. I want to keep it private. Let other people find out when they do? I don't really want to go around and tell people, Annabeth said seriously. Hazel didn't get angry, and she didn't ask questions. She only nodded and smiled in joy for her. It was so heartwarming for Annabeth to know that her friend understood why she did what she did. Hazel especially, she knew would understand because that's just how she was, the kindest soul on planet Earth. I get that, Hazel smiled. I'm just happy. it happened for you. Her hair was refusing to cooperate, and if it wasn't only 45 minutes before finals, Annabeth would have found a pair of scissors to cut it off. She groaned and nearly tossed the curling iron onto the ground, only stopping because she did not want to start a fire. A low groan was ripped from her throat, and she threw her face down in annoyance. Normally, Selena or Rachel helped her with her hair, because her natural curls were wild and big and unruly and required lots of help to force into the perfect show choir curls and bump. A gentle hand went over her shoulders, and there was a wave of slightly there chlorine smell. The hands belonged to Percy, of course, and it made some of the tension ease out of her shoulders. Annabeth dropped her head down to see a smirking Percy with his hair all done, because it was totally straight and not annoying. She scowled at him. "Are you struggling?" he said cheekily. "You're patronizing me." Annabeth hissed. "Never," Percy replied dryly. He leaned down and kissed her cheek. Annabeth blushed and sneakily looked around, thanking God that they were alone in the makeup room. "Why are you even struggling? You already have perfect hair," he asked. "Because it needs to be curled," Annabeth explained. "Your hair is already curly," Percy pointed out. Annabeth rolled her eyes. He shrugged at her as if to say, "It's the truth." "Not show choir curly." "That doesn't even make any sense." Annabeth shrugged, and Percy dragged a chair over to sit next to her, keeping her company as she finished the rest of her hair and aspiration. Percy watched in amusement as she grumbled at the iron like it was a real person. "Of course this is fun for you," she muttered, aiming to kick him in the knee with her heels. Unfortunately, she missed it when he pulled his legs back with a laugh. "I just think it's unnecessary," he admits with a grin. "Yeah, well, this is show choir life, and we all have to have perfect 1-inch curls all around," she gritted out, just narrowly burning her fingertips. "Even if you have pre-existing curls." Percy frowned. "I like your natural hair." "I do too, because it takes me 3 minutes. This, however, does not." "God, I'd riot." "I'm about to." "I'll back you up." Annabeth smiled, and finally she finished her hair. She sighed in relief and set it down, unplugging it as to not cause a fire. Leaning back, Annabeth rubbed her temples. "I can't wait to never do this again after season," she groaned, and Percy chuckled. "Stressful," he commented. "Very," she replied. Percy smiled at her, and it was just so full of affection. Annabeth looked away because she still wasn't used to it. Everything was just so easy around him, and being herself was so simple. But at the same time, he made her nervous and giggly and all blushy, and those were things she had never been before. She leaned her head on Percy's shoulder, even though it was a strange reach. He kindly moved closer so it'd be more comfortable. Annabeth sighed and closed her eyes, enjoying just being here with him. They had a gentle relationship, and she loved it with her whole heart. Maybe she loved him too, but that was something she was a bit too terrified to really think about right now. "Hey," Annabeth said, suddenly remembering what happened earlier that day. "So, my friend figured out we're dating," she said tentatively. "Hazel, she's on the floor with me during the girl song." Nervously, Annabeth snuck a look at Percy. He didn't look mad, thank God, and nor did he look too elated. He just looked understanding. "Is that okay with you?" he asked, reaching for her hand and holding it. Even though he wasn't really showing it on his face, Annabeth could tell he was beyond nervous for the answer. "Of course," she said honestly. "Good," Percy said, letting out a deep breath. "I thought for sure you were embarrassed of me," he admitted. Annabeth couldn't help but laugh into his shoulder. "Okay, no, I'm not embarrassed of you. At all," she promised. I'm scared of the world and what can happen. I've seen it tear people apart, and I don't ever want that to happen." Percy quirked an eyebrow at her. "You really think it's that easy to get rid of me, huh?" he joked. "I'm a freaking leech at this point." Annabeth laughed. "Oh yeah, you are," she agreed. "But really, I'm not embarrassed of you, and I don't think I ever will. I'm just not. But for real, I'm not embarrassed of you. I don't think I'll ever be the type of person to tell anyone, but if someone finds out, I don't have any shame, she said. You really want to go around and tell people that you have a leech for a boyfriend who only eats cake and cookies if they're blue, and literally runs into the wall of swimming pools 4 times a week, he teased, but there was an undercurrent of insecurity to his words. Annabeth knew he was scared that she was embarrassed of him, and she knew that he didn't really see himself to be worthy with her. She hated it because he was so wonderful and so great and just the most perfect person she could ever find and date. Annabeth knew she was lucky to be dating Percy Jackson, but he hadn't even realized that himself, just yet. They might think you're crazy. Yeah, well, maybe I'm a little crazy for you, Annabeth said. It was so cheesy. It hurt her physically, but his smile made it worth it. Really? Yeah, Annabeth said with a little laugh. I could care less if everyone knew if we were together. It's just, but it's nice to just being the 2 of us. No one is trying to push us to do anything, she admitted. Percy hummed. Good point, he admitted. Annabeth smirked, and he lifted her chin and kissed it off. It honestly made her giggle, and slowly she was getting used to her voice doing that. Girl, we only have so much. There was a loud door slam, and Annabeth all but jumped into Percy's chest. They turned around like the world was on fire. When they did, though, Annabeth couldn't help but laugh at what she saw. Rachel, Piper, and Selena were almost to the ground in their gaping, and Hazel was doubled over laughing. Are you 2 dating? Piper shrieked like a banshee, and Annabeth shyly looked at Percy. Yes? Annabeth was swarmed by questions, but Percy's bright smile was the only thing she really noticed during the entire ordeal.